Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. After a minor recording snafu where I accidentally forgot to record the third stage as I originally played it, back we are again with where I left off. Now moving on where we have stage 3, which is basically themed, worked out of an amusement park, which, once it scrolls back on the screen, I can argue is pretty much based off Disneyland. At least they have some kind of a Disneyland-based element in the background there. Starting off, we're going to be heading into an arcade area where, at this point, they're really throwing a lot of the biker-themed enemies around, which is kind of annoying just because they tend to grab a lot more, and even if you're careful, they do have that nice little sucker punch they can throw at you at any given time. But also, we're facing off against, at a later part of the stage, one of the weirder mini-bosses to grace the Streets of Rage series. Now we find ourselves in an arcade-themed area, which has a little toss-up to the Japanese name for the series, and the original game for the series, for that matter, Bare Knuckle. And of course, assorted posters which some of them read more clearly as BK2 or Bare Knuckle 2, referring to this own game. I still have no idea what causes characters to be able to do the special moves backwards, but it's amusing to watch. Oh, didn't even realize it there. I wonder if in this case, certain enemies that have special names are actually referring to staff in this case, such as that yellow signal there, instead of being a regular yellow signal, is named Maven for some reason. Perhaps there's someone on staff that has that as their name or a nickname of some sort, which I imagine is something I'm going to have to check out once the credits roll around. Alright, that's room number 2 clear. We move on to the next section. One less nuisance. At this point, the red signals have more than one life bar worth of health. Although it's kind of interesting they call them red signals, but realistically the jackets are more orange than anything else. Well, no matter. Alright, on to the next room. Once again, another pretty standard section. You'll have enemies dropping off from the ceiling. And I believe in harder difficulties, you'll also have one more of those martial artists actually drop in from nowhere during this. Of course, since it's only on hardest, while they have more of all the regular enemies, no extra martial artists just yet. Alright, and admittedly, in hindsight, this is actually a strange area. We're going to be facing off against a new type of enemy in an area where you wouldn't expect them. Despite what the camera says, I have 10 lives at this moment, as we meet the game's first ninjas. Forgive me if I'm a little quiet, just because the ninjas are particularly annoying enemies due to how quickly they can move around. And hop around, and teleport for that matter. Generally, they're actually pretty hard to get around. As a side note relating to ninjas, on the later versions, as we see, we have a nice little Disney line hanging around in the background there. Anyway, back to the ninjas. They actually end up getting names that are based off of famous Japanese actors off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure there's a reference to Sunny Chiba somewhere around there, a few other names, which for some reason just eluded me. As we meet into the return of certain mid-bosses. In this case, a new version of Electra, and an oddly named Beano. Just as annoying as he was last time with a little more health of anything. Fortunately, once you manage to get him back on his own, he's actually fairly simple. actually have a little more space to fight him in this case than when you ran into him back in stage 1. Alright, and moving on to now the last section of stage 3, which is pretty much, well, let's be honest, it really is just a kind of a clip off of the Alien series. Oh, dread, I forgot those explosions hit me on the last part. Finally, give a nice check. Generally, this is something you probably see more out of a Contra series. Or realistically, as you can even see in the embryos that you can knock over for items, it really is an entire Aliens ripoff at this point. Side note, I generally prefer the way they handled weapons in the second game over than they did for number 3, because in the second game, and technically the first one as well, the weapon usage was unlimited, while for the third game, they actually had it so each weapon had a limited amount of use. Mind you, for certain weapons they did add upgraded versions of the weapon attacks, particularly with the sword. If you did a dashing attack with it, Axe would actually do a rising uppercut motion with the sword, which would take a little more off the health meter for the sword, but do a substantial amount of damage. I just lost that sword, didn't I? Yep, the sword's gone. Now, for Vahilits here, or however that's pronounced, generally the best and safest way is to just kind of let him move around and just jump kick him or punch him whenever available. The problem with how the only real hitbox he has, being his head moves around, it can kind of move around both in horizontal and vertical space, and just touching him will cause you damage. Kinda like that. As a side note, if you happen to still have a purple jacket on screen, if he tosses you around and it hits this mid-boss here, it will actually cause the mid-boss damage. Learned that during the initial run, which I kind of forgot to record. Also, as a side note, no matter what side you hit him on when he dies, he'll go flying off into the upper right. Alright, thank you for the sword. And now for easily one of my most hated bosses. Zamza here is pretty much kind of a Blanca ripoff of some sort. Only more annoying because at least Blanca stands still long enough in order for you to hit him. Zamza will literally jump and slide across the screen at any given time, and anytime he does stick around on the ground long enough, he'll do a running motion where he'll then either try to slash you or grab you straight up. Oh, and he also has that anti-air there. Generally, the way to handle it is to get to him by angle so you can do something that's a little more damaging. Otherwise, you'll end up kind of poking him a bunch of times. Oh, I forgot he could also throw you. Well, never mind, I did say he could throw you like that. I believe that was a lot less painless, or a lot more painless than my initial run, where it took off a bit more health than that. So with that, now we have stage 3 done yet again, and we're gonna go straight into stage 4 for this recording. Slightly off from the previous amusement park, we're now in a nice little stadium setup, which will... Honestly, this is one of my favorite themes in this game, and generally one of my favorite stages in this game. Think about it. I don't know what It's Like Booby is, though. Some of the weird English in this game just gotta make you scratch your head. New baseball. What is that supposed to mean? Alright, there goes a blue signal. At least that one's... it's a light blue, but it's still blue at least. So it's the right color scheme. Oh, there's an example of what I meant earlier by certain numbers having a different color scheme than the actual letters. U3, let's get... oh wait, no, I already killed him. The 3 itself had a different color, was a standard, or a yellow color like it is for the score, instead of blue to match the rest of the name. I think that's only the case with numbered sequences. Oh, that was close. Perhaps there's some cases where it really is better just to use the knockdown version of the jumping kick. Generally, you want to use only the down attack version if you're pretty sure you can combo straight off. Also, in the case of the ground upper, if the last hit misses, it won't actually knock down. So you just sweep this for yourself. So realistically, you want to make sure your spacing is just well enough so that they get hit by the last hit no matter what. Otherwise, they have a good chance to counterpunch you right away. I can really go for some health back. That was not health. And that was a preventable death. Not what I needed at the time. Or I could have actually really used that earlier. And that too. Only problem with swinging something like either the pipe or the sword is that there's a noticeable delay in the actual outcome of the attack. It can get you sucker punch really fast. Yep, that was also another preventable death, but hey. Oh, I must have had 11 lives. Should have been down to 8 already. I don't know what he was just aiming at. Alright, enough of the big bends. Let's move on to the elevator sequence. It's got a very simple music tune, but for some reason I really like it. Basically, this is just kind of an enemy gauntlet kind of section. You'll be coming across a lot of the regular enemies you've been fighting up to this point, as well as a few mini bosses like the martial artists here. If you can help it, keep from any of the enemies from getting behind you, otherwise you will get pretty much beaten up really fast in this section. And things like that. Now the thing about the little sound cue just reminded me. If you're around where one of the martial arts would be dropping, they will give a sound cue in the form of that one karate yell to tell you that you're right where he would be landing. And if you're where it's landing, you're gonna get drop kicked, basically. Just like that. I was hoping to get the right kind of special in order to just bounce him out of the air, but I was holding forward at the time, so it didn't quite work. Alright, now on to stage 4's boss, which may or may not bear a very strong resemblance to a certain former professional wrestler. Okay, let's face it, it's actually the Ultimate Warrior, who technically appeared in the previous game as well as a boss, although he's a lot more detailed this time around. And he's got 3 health bars this time. That's gonna suck. This is part of the reason I wanted all these lives up to this point. There's just certain bosses that I always seem to have a hard time against, and this one's one of them. Even though I generally know what I'm supposed to do here, he's still just difficult. And he can also break out of your combos like that. Damn, I'm gonna catch him off guard. Up running off stage. Generally, the way you want to get around this fight is just short attack sequences that you can get as much damage out of as possible. Otherwise, he will find a way to pretty much just break out of your attack. In hindsight, I probably should have just stuck around to 2 hits and then the grand upper just to take him out. But at least I still have enough lives in order to do reasonably well, and of course haven't gone into sin continue yet. Got at least one of my lives back, and now we find ourselves on a boat for some reason. Unfortunately, this time the segue between one stage and next isn't so obvious. As a side note, I kind of got a little busy, so I wasn't able to say it earlier. But for the Big Ben style enemies, in the original game as well as in the 3rd game, if you were to try to toss them, well, your toss would fail miserably, and they would actually land on top of you for damage to you instead of hurting them. Mind you, I guess during the 2nd game they did a little more exercise, so you're going to be able to lift the Big Ben enemies just fine here. now martial arts are definitely a regular fixture in terms of enemies. Thankfully, the game is nice enough to still throw you some pretty low-ranking versions of them, though. None of the multiple health bar nonsense yet. Alright, on to the next level. Oh, I forgot they tossed in this difficulty the next set of enemies in here. Basically, they have a set of weird TIE fighters, which will beat you senseless as they move considerably faster than anything else you've been fighting up to this point. They have much longer range with their kicks, and just forgive me if I'm a little quiet, they're actually really hard to fight compared to the other enemies up to this point. Everything else has either been your speed or just generally slower. While on the other hand, these ones, the Raven type of enemies, are just generally hit a lot harder and faster than anything else that have come up to this game. Now we have a demoted Barbon as a mini boss rather than a full boss, which we'll encounter 1 second. As a side note, all the Muay Thai fighters off the top of my head will end up getting names based off of birds of some sort, and that's kind of their naming shtick for this game. Actually kind of surprised they didn't end up popping up in the third title, although they did have another new set of enemies that did a lot of kicks like them. I knew those ones looked a lot sillier. Alright, enough of you. I'm low on health and I need to get to the next section. Oh, just who I didn't want to see. A bit too many enemies for this section. My personal preference. Damn it. Okay, now it's back to just Jet and Mark and myself. And I keep missing my kicks. At least on the bright side, this version is a demoted boss as well, and has actually a little less health than he did in the first fight. Let's see if I can make some use of their own grenades. A little too far away to get them to hit themselves. Oh, now you show up. Oh, I forgot, the ninjas also throw shurikens if you're far enough away. fighting who's in charge of the ship. Which fits another area of the really strange bosses they like throwing at you. But at least this one looks a little familiar. Alright, big one. Come on. No mistake, balloon now is what you want to call yourself. Why not? Damn it. Missed my jump. Alright, as much as I hate to approach the boss so soon, I need some help. R-Bear, otherwise known as kind of a bald bull lookalike. Fortunately, he's got an incredibly long reach. And an incredibly silly looking hop. Okay. Unfortunately, I lost some life there, but at least now it's back to, well, it was a one-on-one fight for all of a second. Now you begin to see exactly why I like the grind upwards. When you time it right, it's actually an incredibly safe move. When it's timed correctly, that is. Unfortunately, you can kind of tell this is part of the game where the lives start dwindling down. Oh, I forgot he had a close-range uppercut. If you happen to be really close to him when he gets back up, he'll do that really short uppercut that's meant to kind of keep you from juggling him constantly. Alright, now we find ourselves a nice little tropical island where we're greeted by the local inhabitants, or ninjas. Well, normally I like ninjas. In this case, I might have to make a small exception. At least they have really good music. I am really getting tossed around a lot right now. At least on the bright side, as long as you make sure to land correctly, none of the throws will actually cause you damage. It only really hurts you once you actually hit the ground. And also it's a good way to kind of get a cheap extra hit or two on a lot of enemies. And crap, this is not... Oh, I forgot they have 4 of them in this section now. This was not a matchup I was looking forward to. This is a proverbial death room of sorts. Just because how quickly they all move, and that they all have effectively a full bar of health. Just like you, a playable character. Okay, now line back up. The game wants you to know you're getting beside something important, just because there's a noticeable change in music. Plus, now it's beginning to look more of a kind of a military installation out of something you'd see in a 80s movie. Now that I really think about it, some kind of a base setup of some sort. Not exactly sure what I'm thinking off the top of my head, but it would really feel at home. Forgot about him. It would really feel at home at something like maybe a Schwarzenegger flick, maybe something Commando. I could really see this working in Commando for some reason. Generally, the way the game wants to run at this point, it's just going to overwhelm you with enemies and hope that something slips under the cracks. And unfortunately, that actually is a pretty good plan. Despite all the difficulties I've had with them earlier, realistically, the bikers are the more dangerous parts of this rather than the Big Ben clones. Mostly because the bikers have the sucker punch to go along with it. Come on, get back on screen. You're definitely getting close to something important if they're throwing all these enemies at you. Oh, great, and an electric to go with it too. Why not? Correction, 2 electrics. Alright, I don't want less people with crowbars around here. Alright, on to boss time. Unfortunately, there's no new innovative boss this time. It's actually going to be a recycled set of bosses. With the more annoying bosses to boot. Welcome back to rematch with Samsa, otherwise known as Souther this time, and another jet. This this time named Still. In order to win on this particular boss fight, you actually only need to beat the Zamsa clone. Or if you do, the Stealth clone will automatically die as a result. Mind you, just because of how sheerly annoying he is, you might want to kill him too while you're at it. I was hoping that would have hit more. I can beat this without needing to continue. 1 second. There we go. Proof of theory. Stealth goes down, and although maybe... I don't think I actually even hit Stealth once. Or actually, no, I hit him once only. There goes the match. As I'm now down to a very low amount of lives on this particular continue. Now this would be my favorite stage here. Probably been my favorite theme of the game, back to the industry. Admittedly, this particular stage is a bit of a rehash to kind of the factory stage that I had from the first game. But still an incredibly fun one nonetheless. And ironically, there's all the conveyor stuff in the background. All the conveyor belts are revealing an idea of what you should be expecting at the later part of the stage. Something that I didn't originally pick up first time around, but it's now kind of a fun Easter egg now that I see it, with a little more detail. How much would you like to bet there's some help getting right there? If not in that one, then in the second barrel. That was very timely. Now this is another one of those really tricky rooms, just because of not only are you facing some really quick moving enemies in terms of Electra and ninjas, you have these conveyor belts in order to also deal with, which just make it really hard to kind of keep something in line in order to hit it long enough. That could have gone better. safe place in order to hit anybody is around the center, but unfortunately with the whips, that makes it they hit me a lot. They have a lot easier time hitting me than I do them. What kind of a name is J for a ninja? I didn't even notice that until now. Alright, moving on to the next part of the stage. I have a very painful start. I'm already gonna have to go for the hidden turkey in this section. Just because I had taken such a savage beating on the last section with their mini-bosses. I'm guessing that's supposed to be D signal, but I have no idea what color D is supposed to be. Unless it's actually an O, which olive signal? Maybe? I don't know. It's not a standard color, that much of sure. We at least get stuck in the pattern easily enough. Okay, here's the jump button. Alright, well that's the end of life number 1. On the bright side, at least I was able to get to what I believe is the second last stage before I had to use continue. If that's any cold comfort, at least. If I had had a little more practice, I probably would have been able to get this properly done within the one continue. That hurt. Within the one continue, instead of needing to use one, or at least delay it one more stage at least. They can block swords with their knees? Really? That's just not fair. I couldn't block a sword with my knee. Probably could. Think about it, but it's a really bad idea is all I'm saying. I do have to correct myself earlier. One of those were named Raptor, which kind of doesn't fit under the whole bird name thing that I was mentioning earlier. Alright, and the next round of really weird Jack names, Soya! Why the hell not? Alright, down to the easiest enemy of that lot. Please tell me. Yes, it's boss time finally. Which will actually be a relief from that enemy gauntlet. Despite all the hopping around, they're actually way easier enemies than any of the regular humanoid enemies. Now, as a side note, if you happen to be too close when you defeat one of them, yes, the explosion will hit you. Go to stage 7 with, admittedly, I guess that was considered your breather boss of the game because that was easily, well, it was kind of a cakewalk for lack of a better term. I can't think of a good way to describe it, ladies and gentlemen. And as that music will tell you, we are now on the last stage. In a room of one stage, our last stage boss has already been demoted to a kind of a regular mook of sorts. On this last stage here, we'll be probably facing a little bit of everything. And by probably, I mean you'll literally face at least one version of every boss you come across at this point before getting to the finale. I didn't even hit him. Why did it explode? Still really hate the bear type of enemies. their attacks just come out really quickly, which kind of makes it harder to hit them. Alright, another enemy gauntlet before the end. That's why you should never let them surround you. Stage 1 boss, welcome back. This will be the last time we run into you. The game is at least generous enough to refund you some of your health after you clear a section, or in this case after you clear a boss. And considering everything you're going to be fighting up to this point, you're going to need that health back. He's on the bright side because of the walls. He doesn't have nearly as much as you can do in order to run away from you. Mind you, also have a little less vertical, you have a little less vertical space in order to work with him as well. So it's kind of a bit of a up and a down. Unfortunately, I know the next boss that's going to be coming up, and this is going to suck. Yep. Welcome back, the Ultimate Warrior again. Only in this case, I want the space to work with him. I don't know what just happened there, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, in case you're wondering what just happened there, the whole thing just kind of spazzed, and that's why it just got grabbed. Alright, let's proceed now that the emulator seems to be working again. That was a bad idea. That would have not happened in actual Genesis, unfortunately. Oh well, that's what you get for with live recording. Weird stuff like this can happen at any given time. Now think about it, something weird like that happened during my recording of the last few stages for Minus Infinity as well, where in that case the whole screen kind of blacked out, and when I came back to I was already dead, having fallen down the pit when I didn't move into it. Damn it. Crap. Okay. One more enemy gauntlet. And then we move on to the last boss sequence of this game, as Mr. X and what would later turn out to be fan favorite Shiva come into play. Considering his full arsenal, it's no surprise he ended up becoming a secret but playable character in the third game. He was kind of already built from the get-go. In hindsight, it kind of begs you if he was actually considered as a possible hidden character all along. Oh, come on, that should have not hit me. And his final crash can apparently cancel that. Why not? Get Mr. X to use his machine gun at somewhere other than the top of the screen, you can actually use the top of the screen to hide for a bit. Unlike the rest of the boss fights though, you will have enemies scrolling in and out the whole damn time. As long as you can avoid dying though, Mr. X is honestly a bit of a cakewalk. The real problem is just making sure you can keep close enough in order to avoid getting shot to death, which I'm not doing too good of a job right now. Oh great, he died off screen. Why not? Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Streets of Rage 2 on hard mode. I didn't expect to go through as many continues as I did, but hey, a win is a win in this case. Yeah, once again, this is probably my favorite of the series here. Second. Yeah, let's put over to everything. It's really unfortunate that the third game in the series, or at least the product we got on the North American market, was admittedly, other than a few system designs, honestly a step down in terms of actual gameplay there. With the upgrades there, they actually did quite a few things right. In the third game, you could use your special moves a lot more freely. With the gauge system that, if you waited until the whole thing was full, you could use it free, but you could technically use it in between as well, but depending on how much of the bar had built up would tell you how much life you ended up spending in order to get away with it. Also, depending on how well you were playing, basically avoiding death, you would also be able to build up your dash or your dash special moves, which in this case Axel's Grand Upper would get on the first version a longer distance. Second version would have a kind of a spinning punch thing, and the last version having a spinning punch and following into an uppercut. That the spinning punches got a bit more of a vertical up and down distance as well, in order to hit more things along the way. It also had some more branching paths that went along there, and the original story was a bit more in depth, which kind of got neutered for the North American market. And of course, there was kind of some difficulty changes, which actually made the North American version more difficult, to my understanding. I think our version of normal was realistically the original version of hard, and moving on, so on and so forth, which made it really annoying to play. On the bright side, they also happen to have some extra hidden characters in the original version. They had a mini boss named Ash, which was probably one of the most flamboyant. There's no polite way to put it. It's basically a flamboyant homosexual that kind of leapt around and hit you with limp wrists, along with kind of throwing you around, that appeared in place of Shiva on the original first stage. And he was stripped out of the North American version for obvious reasons, And Shiva also played a slightly different role and ended up being a playable character, but he made an early Stage 1 appearance, replacing Ash instead. I can't remember, there might have been one or two other changes. I know there were some hidden characters, but generally overall, Streets of Rage 3 was kind of a missed opportunity in order to do something really over the top, and the series honestly just kind of died from there. There were a few attempts in the later years, especially during the Dreamcast era. I remember seeing some stuff for a beta for that beta sequel of Streets of Rage 4. That, unfortunately, it looked a little rough shot, but it still could have been worked on. But instead, Sega not really having the staff for it anymore, ended up having to kill the title, and aside from something like the Streets of Rage remake, fan-made PC game, which is kind of like a tribute to all the original titles, nothing had been heard from since. And subsequently for the SR remake, in order to maintain the copyright, that thing has gone underground, basically. It was forced to be removed due to a cease and desist that Sega's legal matters took into hand. So, aside from maybe some versions on Xbox Live or PSN, whichever you prefer, it's unfortunately really hard to come across any Streets of Rage goodness these days. While I hope that's going to change in the future, there's nothing admittedly that's showing any promise towards that. So, if you don't already have an original copy of this game or the other two in the series for your Sega Genesis or Mega Drive, whichever you want to call it, I would suggest looking up either Xbox Live or PlayStation Network to see if you can get at least a downloadable version of the title. I know for a fact the PSN has a copy of Streets of Rage 2 along with trophies for everyone who's really trophy-centric that you can play, and enjoy yourself a really fun a really fun beat-em-up. In terms of me over here at Retro Ninja Gaming, that's the end of this particular episode. Catch you next time, where I haven't decided on whether I'm going to do something else from the Genesis library or not, but that'll be coming up for sure within the next week or so. Thank you all for watching. See you next time.